May I have your attention, please? Good evening.
You're listening to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. We thank you for tuning in and hope you enjoy another exciting episode of our show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. It's the 22nd day of March 2021, another Monday night. And I found the article that came out earlier today is real interesting because something just happened to me in reference to that. But Facebook took down 1.3 billion fake accounts in 3 months. All right, so it said Facebook disabled more than 1.3 billion fake accounts in the final months of last year as part of its efforts to tackle misinformation, the company said Monday. The tech titan revealed the figure in a blog post outlining those efforts before CEO Mark Zuckerberg testified at a Thursday congressional hearing about disinformation on social media. The number of bogus accounts Facebook took down between October and December has equivalent to nearly half the 2.8 billion monthly active users who were on the platform at the end of last year. Facebook blocks millions of fake accounts each day, most of them at the time of creation, VP of Integrity Guy Rosen said in the blog post. The company also investigates and takes down covert foreign and domestic influence operations depend on fake accounts, he said. Facebook now has more than 35,000 people working to combat misinformation on its platforms, according to the post. The Silicon Valley giant has also invested in artificial intelligence systems that have helped remove more than 12 million pieces of content about COVID-19 and the vaccines developed to treat it, Rosen wrote. While nobody can eliminate misinformation from the internet entirely, we continue to use research teams and technologies to tackle it in the most comprehensive and effective way possible, he said. Zuckerberg is slated to testify along with Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey and Google chief Sundar Pichai at Thursday's Virtual House Energy and Commerce meeting hearing, probing social media's role in promoting misinformation and extremism. Lawmakers ramped up the pressure on platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Google-owned YouTube to address those problems in the wake of the January 6th Capitol riots. The deadly insurrection led all three services to temporarily or permanently suspend then-President Donald Trump. And now they have to work on actually combating those hackers, man, because it can be a serious situation. This weekend, I'm in here watching Netflix, not doing too much, laid back, relaxing, and all of a sudden I get a telephone call. And when I get that telephone call, they ask me who a certain person is, and I'm like, I have no real clue. However, then they read something that was supposedly attributed to me. I was like, well, I'm sitting here and I'm watching Netflix. I'm kind of doing nothing today, not even looking at my damn phone. But when I go into where they said it was, I read this entire thread, man. And that's my fault for not having the two-factor authentication and all of that stuff on there, because these folks had a whole entire conversation, man. And I'm sitting there like, you know what? This is where the drama starts. So I log out of my thing, looked, and found out I was logged into about 6 other places, nowhere near where I live. So I had to reset my password, download the Google Authenticator, add the Facebook to that. So hopefully we don't run into that problem again. But to whoever was offended by what was posted attributed to me, man, I apologize for that, because it wasn't me. I got better things to do. And on Sunday, I was trying to do absolutely nothing. So it's real interesting how things turn out. But it's the 6-man Dean Geronimo, and I'm in the studio from NJ to NC with my right-hand man, Mark Lee. So, Mark, tell me what's good in your neck of the woods, my brother.
I don't know what's good in my neck of the woods, but you get into all kinds of trouble with the internet people and
Man,
all of that
I'm
stuff.
getting in trouble.
All kinds of trouble.
I'm getting in trouble. I'm watching Netflix. It's laid back, bro. It's ridiculous how, people will take things, man, and they have nothing better to do. I got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff that I'm very private with, and to be put into that, and there's no need. I was like, do I go on here and try to explain it? I can't. I was hacked. It's that simple. But when dealing with people, they ain't gonna even listen. So I just say, you know what? I'm just gonna let it die down and let it be what it be, because I don't want to insert myself into that whole damn conversation. It wasn't mine to begin with.
Wasn't yours in the first place. You didn't need to be in the middle of it, and now you're not in the middle of it, and
right.
all of that. So I definitely agree with you. Sometimes folks just try to get you in the middle of stuff that you don't need to be in the middle of whatsoever. But yeah, things are fairly quiet down here. I've done a couple of small things in terms of had a replay of an interview that I had done pre-recorded. So I had the Andrew Lozano interview that aired on Mullins Music and Memories. That's one of the great things about streaming is that sometimes you can do pre-recorded interviews. So I had already had that in the pocket and everything. And then I had some other things that I did on the radio show. So it was actually a relatively quiet day in terms of new guests is what I'm trying to say. But that's good because I still had to grade my test papers for measurement and do a number of other things that needed to be done as well. But we did get our shows in the pocket, just like we're doing the show here as well. So we did get things done. But, this weekend I had the privilege of adding a new title to the many titles that I have. Because like I said, I'm on the board that have served as a judge of different film festivals. So you can sing Here Comes the Judge, because I've now done the Nevermore film a couple of times and done our festival at Hayti several times. And then now I'm getting to do one for our fine brethren and sisters in the LGBT community. So I'm going to judge some of their films and see what they're talking about in their lives and everything. But what I did is, I'm a member of Daybreakers, which is like a dance organization, a dance society, and all of that. And they do those day-breaking parties, usually around noon my time, but I guess that's 9 or in the morning if you're in the West Coast, and it might be nighttime in parts of the globe that are because I think they're based in New York, that are 9 or 10 hours away from us. So, depending on where you are, it's just one big dance party, one big mindfulness party. But, they kind of started doing these kind of, I'd say probably monthly events, if not some months they might have even done more than once a month. But they were doing these kind of events, and because of COVID, they were all done virtually. So they were done on the computer, and I've got my dance steps in a couple of times. Other people got their dance steps in a couple of times, shook a tap to toe here and there. But they had a theme song. So they decided that they were going to write a new theme song. So they wrote a new theme song, and by the time I got done with Zach's show and a couple of other obligations that I already had in the pocket on that particular day, I believe that was Saturday, I jumped on the conversation that they were having and got to be one of about, let's say, 200, 250 people that can say that we added lyrics, thoughts, some sort of wavelength into this song. And the song is called We Are the Joy Generation. So I can add myself to songwriting as one of the things that I had not tackled before. So I am now, I guess I got to join ASCAP or BMI, as my friend Zach said, and everything. But I am an unofficial songwriter. So like I said, I can say that I have tried to write lyrics. And actually, I remember doing that once before with the National Black Theater Festival, which hopefully will be happening this year. A lot's going to depend on how COVID protocols go. That's not till the fall. So hopefully they can still pull that event off in 2021. But I had done a combination of song and prose and everything else. But in that case, I intentionally wrote only prose and wasn't trying to write song lyrics. So this is probably my second time that I remember they did this long poem, but they consider that more of a poem than a song. So this is my first attempt at writing a song that I can recall. So I've done these group poems, and now I've done a group song. So I've written a group song.
Hey, just make sure they put M. Lee in there when it says written by. That's all you need is that production credit on there. You know what I mean? Make sure that,
that production credit, get my 1 cent or my half a cent or whatever, but I need a production credit. You never can tell. Remember some of them songs that were all about joy or were big time group songs became big hits. I think about like We Are the World and some of those other songs that were like that. So, if I can just get my one little penny or whatever, I'll be a happy camper. But of course that means kind of coming back to what Zach was talking about. I've got to like join some association, and apparently those are not cheap. And I think just to be a member is like a couple of $100, and I don't see a couple of $100 laying around my house right now. I see some coins laying around, but it's not a couple of hundred. So, like I said, there might be a quarter down there and a dime, but I've not seen a couple of $100 and everything. I was gonna say on a different lighter note, I do follow my college basketball. I do the March Madness, and I did not realize that apparently, and maybe you knew this because you're a smart cookie and everything, but apparently the odds of creating a perfect bracket are next to impossible. They talk about winning the lottery. Yeah, it's worse than the lottery. Sure. I think that they said it's something like 1 in some crazy amount. I couldn't even tell you what that number is, but it's like, quadrillion trillion or something like that. But they say it is next to impossible to create a perfect bracket, and the perfect bracket was already shattered by like Saturday with all those upsets. But I think the furthest we've gotten is, in order for you to have a perfect bracket, you have to pick all 63 or 64 games correctly. And the closest was a gentleman that got to, I think, around 48 or 49. But we're nowhere near that this time around. And he was sometime back and everything. But it sounds like, you got a better chance of finding a piece of gold, finding a full kernel of gold in a piece of sand than you do finding, apparently, this impossible thing to find. But it has been fun watching a couple of games and seeing some major upsets. I see that Loyola Chicago knocked out at least one number one, so Illinois will not be going to the Sweet 16. And it doesn't help when you've got special people behind you that have a direct call center and a direct call line. Because I was telling a friend of mine about Loyola winning, and they were like, "That's not fair, because isn't that a school where the Mother Jean is at, is the world famous nun fan, so she's both a nun and a fan." So they were thinking that she has a direct access and a direct calling signal directly to the man above. So they were telling me that that's really not fair for her to even be there in the auditorium, because that's like having a secret weapon, and apparently the secret weapon works and everything. But they were saying, it's just not fair when you got somebody with direct access to.
How about this? Oral Roberts University beat the Florida Gators yesterday.
I know. That was another one. But that's another religious school.
So they're headed to the Sweet 16. They play on Saturday. They play Arkansas. And Arkansas is the number 3 seed, man. So that's going to be, I don't know, man. It's what just happened here? You know what I mean?
Well, if you want to talk about what just happened here moment, let's also not forget that, a whole bunch of teams came from the big state, and I did call it the big state because it is big in size, big in the way that they, their attitude of life and everything of that nature. So they had the most teams of any state this year, and it was some record amount, was from Texas. But the big University of Texas went down to a small college from Texas named Abilene. I think it was Abilene Christian. So these small colleges are just coming out of left and right and everything. So Abilene Christian will also, I believe, be in the Sweet 16 as well. So it's just amazing some of these things that are happening and all. Or definitely, it's just amazing watching these games and seeing these small colleges come out and do some truly amazing things. But hey, isn't that why you play the game? Because any big boy can beat any small boy in the middle of the game and all of that. So it's going to be interesting to see what goes on in that regards as well. Because, anybody, what's the old saying that they used to say? I can't remember. It might have even been Howard Cosell that said it, that on any given night, anybody can take out anybody depending on how you're going and all of that. So, and by the way, Abilene Christian will not be going anywhere, because I just looked at the score and they are getting crushed by UCLA. So they did good to make it to the round of 32, but it does not look like they will be making it to the round of 16, because right now they're down by 19 points. Unless one of those miracle runs happens, and anything is possible. Miracle runs can happen, and that could be something that transpires. But right now, it does not look like they're going to be going anywhere but back home.
And that's true. I mean, I'm looking at the now, man, and it's like whoever, I know up here, up this way, they're big on Villanova. Villanova is going to they beat North Texas. So I guess they are playing Baylor next.
Yep.
And then you have Syracuse and Houston. That's probably going to be a good game,
Oh, yeah, that's a really good game.
I'm just trying to look at all of these things real quick, man, and I see, it's still got a ways to go before you get to the...
Yeah, we still got a way to go. A lot of people are already writing the champions as if it's already happened, because a lot of people are already feeling that it is Gonzaga's to lose, because they have not lost a game, I don't think, at all this year, even in the middle of this COVID pandemic and everything. But they've also played for a conference that doesn't have as many powerhouses as, say, the Big East, the SEC, the ACC, or the Big Ten. So, until they destroy a couple of these teams, or at least beat them in close games, the jury will still be out, in my opinion, because, like I said, they are part of a smaller conference, and I don't know that they played a lot of those big boys in terms of the regular season. So they still got to prove something to me, but we're going to see. They could do it. I could turn around and they could be the national champions. We got about 2 weeks to see that, because that's actually happening on Easter weekend, I believe, is when that will take place and everything. So that'll be going on. And coming back to your social media, I saw that, and I know I really hate it, because that's happened to me before too, when you have people that write things that you didn't write, or when they take things, meaning money that you didn't give them, and definitely a number of other things. But the other thing that I saw that really was like shocking to me, and I was sitting there going like, I can't believe he actually wants to do this, was that there was a certain gentleman that used to live in 1600 that apparently is looking at starting his own social media network. So he's going to go out there and start his own social media network. I don't know what we're going to call it, instead of Twitter, Trumpter. So I don't know what he's going to call it, but he is already, he came out, and after one of his people said that they were going to let him start it, that he did admit that he is about to start his own social media network, because I guess he got kicked off of everybody else.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know why?
Of his own.
It's like, I got kicked off for this. Well, I'll start my own. And the thing about it is, he has the money to do it, but he will have people that follow him right onto that platform, because then they can spew hate all day long. So, for us, I wouldn't recommend, there are some of us who were 45 supporters, but I wouldn't advise you to go on there thinking like you're invited to the party, because you're going to be the main entertainment, and it's not going to be a good feeling. So, you might want to stay away from that, because no telling what the hell is going to be allowable on that platform. And then, some people say, we can block it, but you really can't, because the First Amendment gives folks the right to free speech, no matter how hateful or condescending or disrespectful it is. They still have that right. And you know what? Sadly, there's going to be a whole lot of people that join, his little social media experiment. And I just don't see it being beneficial to anybody. It's not like anybody's going to get on there and have any news that you can use. It'll be stuff that you'd rather lose. So, I know I'm staying away from it, so I ain't got nothing to worry about. You won't have me on there like set up.
You mean you're not going to be running over there to check it out? You're not going to be jumping up and down and saying, yeah, I got to be there?
Just like some conversations I don't get to because I have an opinion, but at the same time, that opinion won't lead to anything but, it'll be misunderstood. And then I kind of, stay away from that, man. I'll post stuff on my page because the folks that are on my page, we know each other, so we can have those conversations. But certain conversations you cannot have with individuals with who you don't know. You can't talk about religion. You can't talk about prejudice, racism. You can watch a conversation, but I wouldn't advise getting into it unless you know that person and that person knows you. It's sort of like you don't sit down at a table and eat with everybody, you know, and those are conversations where, you know what, nah, I'm not having it unless we are identifying problems and coming up with solutions. That's different. But to simply have a conversation about politics, religion, you know, the sexual orientation issue that's out there, even sports, the weather. I'm not having them conversations with you, man. I don't know you, so
I understand.
You know,
you can't have those conversations at all. There's no telling what lies they might tell on you and different other things. So I can definitely relate to that. You don't want to just be having any kind of conversation. So definitely I can relate to what you're saying and all of that. By the way, what are you thinking about these Asian attacks? Because apparently there's a lot of folks that are thinking that we're in the middle of like another form of what was going on with Black Lives Matter, only this time is those of the Asian descent based on what happened in Atlanta. But I'd love to know your thoughts on what's going on, and do we need this anti-hate law that is going around? I personally think that we probably needed it a long time ago.
It's long overdue. What happened now is the Asian community has become the latest target for years and continues to be those who are Black or African American, whichever term you prefer. You know, we're still targets, but now they've chosen other targets as well, the LGBTQIA community, now the Asian community. You know, they're just going, the round table, you know, they've been given a pass for the last 4 years to move as they saw fit. So now their leader is no longer in office, but their ideologies still remain the same. And until something is done to give them severe penalties, the same way, like I said, those law enforcement officers that took the lives of those innocent people, man, they should be, you know, not just, oh, they lost their job. That's not good enough. You know, they need that penitentiary time. You know, if you took a life, then, hey, man, I think we should reinstate the death penalty, because some people will say it's too harsh, but you know what? You're killing kids, you're killing innocent folks that haven't done anything. You got knees on their necks and stuff like that. And jail is too easy for you. You know, you're going to live out the rest of your days. If you don't have a conscience, you taking a life is not really going to bother you too much. So in that case, I say eye for eye, man. Like, you kill them, all right, we need to take yours away from you. Stop wasting the taxpayers' money to feed, house, and give you medical care when you willingly took a life, and the life, you weren't a threat. I felt threatened. I was afraid. Well, if you were afraid when you first put on that damn uniform. You know what I mean? So now you have people out here that are attacking, you know, individuals who are minding their own business. Up here in Philadelphia, man, they had 4 guys that ran into one of the grocery stores, stole some beer, and when the store owner, she came out there to, you know, confront the man, they pushed her in the snow, they beat her up. You know, those guys, man, we got you on camera. Trial wouldn't last but 20 minutes, because I'm going to show this video, and I'm going to recommend you get 50 years. And some people say, oh, that's too harsh. But it wasn't harsh back when Black men were getting locked up for possession of little to no narcotics and getting these huge sentences and all of that stuff. So pick your struggle. It's not going to be, you know, oh, it was all right for them, but now we figured it's too harsh so nobody gets it. All right, these folks are out here willingly and knowingly assaulting other folks, and they got it. They should have something, man. That law should come with the penalties that were way more severe than what they did in the 1994 crime bill. So now, if you decide to do this, you know what consequences are going to come with it, and there should be no feeling bad. Don't get on there, oh, he was a good person. Nobody wants to hear that because it's just like a child, growing up. You might have done everything you were supposed to do around your parents. But when you got out of their eyesight, all of us have done something that we know that if caught, our parents we wouldn't be having this conversation now. My parents would have taken me out, bro. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't want to hear, oh, he was a good person. When? Because what he did right now is terrible, So it's not, I can't judge you by what somebody says you did. I can judge you by what I see you do. So if I see you doing the most in the worst way, there's no good thought that I'm going to have of you. I don't care if you save 1,000 people from a certain doom. You inflicted pain on some individuals who did nothing to you. So guess what? We're going to judge you by that right there. And we say, you know what? If you need to go ahead and get that 40 years, no parole, so you can go ahead and live your days out being told what to do, being told when to get up, when to eat, when to take your medication or whatever. And I hope that you're put in a situation where you really can't handle closed spaces. Guess what? Nobody's going to let you go outside. You brought this on yourself. Life is choices. And sometimes we make the wrong choice and we learn the lesson and we move on. Sometimes, for some people, the choices they make intentionally, and then they want mercy when it's the other end, and we're seeing that now where Derek Chauvin, they're just stretching all of that out, man, like, oh, well, the city settled with the family as they should, but now it's like, oh, well, the jury can be tainted. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? Man, you outright killed that man. I don't care if y'all knew each other and had beef or whatever. Now you killed the man, and you need to answer for that. You know what I'm saying? If you or I went out there and did that, man, they would bury us. We'll have so much penitentiary time consecutive on each count that we would never see the light of day again. So why should he get a pass because he was an officer? That doesn't mean anything. That means you had a job. You had one job and you failed. You failed. Your job isn't to go out there and wreak havoc. Your job is supposed to, dissolve and resolve disputes and quiet things down. But a lot of them don't even think like that. They're like, you know what? I have the power, so you do what I say. Well, that comes from a lack of you knowing who you are. And in your insecurity, you have to, belittle someone or demean someone or mistreat someone to make yourself feel better. And when caught, you need to suffer. There should be no leniency for you whatsoever. So those that are out there attacking the, black folks, Asians, the homosexuals, you need to suffer, man. You just need to go ahead and eat that time, whatever they give you. Don't cry. We don't care what your mama thinks. We don't care what your family thinks. Because all of them going to speak highly of you anyway because they're biased. But when you have someone, when you have someone that's no relation to you and you show me this and you say, what do you think? I think he needs to serve at minimum, okay, it was 8 minutes and 40-something seconds. Almost, let's just round up. 9 minutes you had your knee on that man's neck. So if things supposed to come 70 times 7, if I multiply that 9 times 7, I get 63. And I take that 63 and convert it into years, then you should have 63 years behind bars. I know then you will never see outside again, or you can pick what's behind door number 2, and we could go ahead and execute you the same way you executed that man. Let's see what happens. Let's see if you last 9 minutes.
Makes a lot of sense. Charging the main phone and everything, but that makes a lot of sense and everything. The other thing I was going to ask you, and by the way, I did get in touch with the lady with the human trafficking and sent her an email and called her and talked to her on the telephone. So hopefully she's going to call us or call in at some point today, because I did tell her I wanted her on the show today so that we could have more representation from your lovely New York area and everything. But I did just text her and everything, and I also sent her an email telling her that. Yeah, I just texted her. But if you want to text her as well, you can do that. But I just texted her before I charged up the phone, because the phone was about to be on low percentages and all of that. So I just texted her using the main phone. But if you want to text her as well, that's cool. But I was also, while we're waiting and everything, let you know that I did hear from the Lunar Wave person. They've already sent me a video and everything else. So I know that that person will definitely be here next week talking to us about the fact that maybe we're doing this whole time thing wrong and all of that, and actually had some thoughts about what might really be going on with space travel and the moon and a bunch of other things. So that ought to be an interesting conversation. I think they're going to be calling us possibly next week, if not next week, definitely in the month of April and all of that. I got to remember whether I've got them booked for the streaming platform first or the audio, but they definitely got some interesting views. And I know we've got a publicist that'll be calling us for sure on next week, and because I had her already on the streaming platform, so she'll be sharing her things that she's been doing, including working with getting a gentleman out of jail that was falsely accused. So she's going to be sharing a little bit of that story and everything that was going on, I think, in Canada, as well as some of her Canada activism work and all of that. So we're looking forward to hearing from Miss Lamore. So yes, definitely has some of that French background and all of that. But definitely one of the other things I was going to ask you is, what are your thoughts about the border being closed? Because apparently the border is closed, and apparently we opened it, and now it's closed again, because apparently members of the Biden administration have announced that the borders are closed. But I don't know about these borders being closed, and I definitely don't know about kids being stuck on the middle of a border without a place to go on either side. But they did announce that the borders are closed, and apparently we still have a mess on our hands in terms of our immigration policy, and particularly our Latin American immigration policy. But what are some of your thoughts about what we can do about the border, other than trying to make sure that we help some of these countries get better in their own land so that they don't feel like running over here all the time and all of that? But what are some of your thoughts?
You know what? You're closing the border to the wrong people, man. Folks are coming over here because they want to have a better life for their families and for their children. You shut the border off to them, but then you allow individuals to come in who go to our schools, learn how to. For instance, 9/11, man, they came over here, went to flight school, and next thing you know, the towers came down. But you didn't close the borders off to them. They're coming from these countries. Okay, you're coming over here by yourself. What are you coming to do? Why are you here? You know what? Come over here, and if you do 6 months over here, we got to find out who you are first, not just say, oh, we're the melting pot, we let you in. You let some in, but you don't let others. You close the border off to those that are coming from, Mexico. Oh, they're illegal. Yeah, man, they got the cartels killing people out over there, and other things that's going on. You have, and I don't know if that rule still stands, but once upon a time when the Haitians were coming by way of inner tube and whatever makeshift floating device that they had, if they made it to American soil, they were allowed to stay. If they were caught in the water, they were turned around and told to go back. Now, when you look on a map, it's a far distance, but it's not that far. But can you imagine being in the ocean, man? On like an inner tube?
Being in the ocean?
On an inner tube, right? And then somebody catch you in the water and turn you around. Are you kidding me? You know what I'm saying? Are you kidding me? These folks are leaving their country. I already got
past the sharks at one time. Now you want me to go back to the sharks again?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
That makes no sense at all.
I just got word from Dr. Cooke. She has a crisis situation. One of the females that she tries to help, man, unfortunately her life was taken. So we're going to have to reschedule. We're going to have to reschedule her for, for that. And I'm just telling you, you know, be safe. And we will touch base soon.
Yeah, we'll touch base with them. We'll get a reschedule either next week or another time. But I figured something was going on when I hadn't seen her pop in and everything, because we had a great conversation in our pre-interview. So I definitely was looking forward to learning more about all the work that she's doing. But anytime that those crises happen, you got to take care of those crises. And that's in any of this kind of crisis work, whether it's dealing with sex abuse or whether it's dealing with child abuse or a number of the other kinds of abuses that are out there. So yes, definitely our thoughts go out to those that have lost folks and all of that, but definitely it is something that we have to deal with on a regular basis. But it just looks like we have somebody that is called in. So somebody's at the door. So
yeah, we got somebody at the door, so let's find out who it is. Welcome to Straight Talk. Welcome to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. You are now on the line. Tell us who you are and where you're calling from.
Tony Ginn, calling from Tacoma, Washington.
All right, how you doing?
Oh, yeah, we've been kind of going back and forth, but I kind of figured that this would probably be the best way to have a conversation. How's it going? I heard.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is Mark over here, and that's Dean, my partner in crime on the audio show and everything. But, yeah, this gentleman, Mr. Ginn, has actually done a lot of great work, and he's got a musician friend that was actually a world-famous musician and did a number of other things. So, Terry, if you would just share with our audience a little bit about both your family legacy as well as some of the things that you're doing as well, because definitely I know that we're looking forward to learning more about the amazing things that you've got going on. And we were actually just talking about sports earlier, and I know that you're a sports fan and that you actually were seeing that Loyola of Chicago had used their magic powers of Sister Jean and won another game to get into the Sweet 16, but I believe you told me that you think that it's going to be Gonzaga all the way. But what I'm more interested in learning about is your musical legacy and your musical history.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. Second of all, I'd say, you know, it's a humbling experience to know that when you're reared or raised by your grandfather, and that's Joe Jordan, who was a ragtime composer, born in Cincinnati, 1882, and died at the age of 89 just prior to his 90th birthday, September 11th, 1971. Golly, Grandpa did a lot. We could go back to early days, 1910, when he sent Fannie Brice to stardom at the Ziegfeld Follies. And two songs, Lovie Joe and That's My Honey Shores You're Born. He couldn't enter the theater because he was a Negro, went to Europe, and basically made his fortune there. Traveled all over Europe, Corsica, Russia, teaching ragtime. Came back to New York, I want to say 1914, certainly, 17 after the war. It's an interesting story because he was playing for the Earl of Scotland when a buzz bomb came through the roof, hit his piano, was a dud, and he said, "Oh, time to go." So he came back to New York, established the first musicians union, Black Musicians Union, Local 109. He had a touring group called the 13 Sharps and Flats. And then in 25, he was working with Charles Mott at the Pekin Theater in Chicago, and doing, writing and scoring all of the Negro musicals. And he also built his Jordan building in 1925. It was on State Street. And we tried to make it a historical landmark, but the city won out, and now the police station is there. Currently, I've got, of course, all of his information, and want to do a documentary on my grandfather of Chicago, one of the projects I'm working on. Then in 27, he went to Paris and did the score for Josephine Baker when she came out with Sirens of the Tropics and the Follies Brazier. then came back to the United States in 1936. During the Depression, he was appointed by FDR to work with Orson Welles in the WPA project. 1944, appointed by Ike to go to Fort Huachuca to head up the Fort Huachuca marching band, and wrote 2 songs there, Fighting Sons of Guns and Huachuca, Huachuca. And then the entertainment division was transferred to Fort Lewis, Washington, which is Tacoma, Washington, where I was born. And then when he got here, there's a little area here, it's called Salishan, which actually is on the Puyallup Indian Reservation. And it was the only place that black soldiers could live at the time. So he got his real estate license and made it possible for the black soldiers to move to a community called Hilltop, which was very diverse. Italians, Norwegians, Native Americans, Filipinos, so on and so forth. And then after that, and of course he was very involved, with music, teaching piano lessons to elementary students. But in 1948, he wrote the Lincoln High School alma mater, Dear Lincoln, and just kept moving forward. Through the 50s, he got appointed as a deputy sheriff, worked with some very well-known public figures here in Tacoma, played for wealthy Wood family people, ran for state representative as a Republican in 1977 for state representative. And it's funny, when upon his death, I asked him about that because I was the last one to see him. And I said, Grandpa, why'd you run for the 27th district as representative of the Republican? He said, listen, son, back then, a lot of blacks were Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
He said, but, it's like politics is like baseball. If you're in left field and all the balls will be hitting the right field, you better change fields. So, and then he also said, well, that's where the money is.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, you've been getting interested yourself in just our history in general. So tell me when that developed, your love of Black history. I know that we just came out of Black History Month, and I actually think that we should celebrate it just about all the time. But I know that's one of your passions and everything.
Yeah. As I'm writing my autobiography, I've pointed out that I was raised by white teachers. But with my mother being a chief librarian, she was for 37 years, built the whole library system at Fort Lewis. Mom was very adamant about being a good reader. So, and then of course, she graduated from Hunter College at the age of 16, went to Columbia University, and had a major was French and Spanish. By the way, she went to Hunter with Ruby D. Anyway, so when she came out to join my grandfather, she went to the University of Washington, got a master's in library science, and she served in that position for 37 years. And 2 years ago, May 22nd, the Department of the Army honored her, and then actually named one of the libraries, which is a historic landmark, after her. But my point is that she was the one that really gave me the incentive and taught me Black history. Later, of course, I became a researcher myself, and as an adjunct professor, with a master's in fine arts, I really delved into it. So I recognize as well that Black history really is not taught in the schools. And many of our folks, adults and young folks, really have no understanding, of the root of Black history and where it started. So, a lot of people don't realize in 1500, the first slaves were brought to America by the Spaniards, and you could only sell 12. And then, of course, it got larger and larger after that. But there's a misnomer in terms of everybody says, well, 1619, is when the first slaves arrived. So I kind of, I feel like obligated, if you want to say, to make sure that the actual historical record and the archives are correct. And of course, I also research film history, many actors and film technology and so on and so forth, and it becomes a real help for me as an actor and scriptwriter and musician, lyricist, and so on and so forth.
What were some of the things that you wish that we actually learned more of in terms of history from the school system? Because I agree with you that a lot of times we don't get enough. We get stuck with the all-stars, as I call them, the Frederick Douglasses, the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X's, the Harriet Tubmans, and a number of others. But we don't know some of the lesser characters, even though some of those lesser characters actually have an even more compelling story. But I was just wondering, what are some of the stories that you wish more people knew about from your own research?
Oh, man, that's a good question. Covering all kinds of, well, let me just kind of, since we touched on sports, Arthur Ashe, golly, there's Wilma Rudolph, Bob Gibson, the Harlem Globetrotters, Bob Hayes. Of course, I've already written articles on Jackie Robinson, Frank Robinson. Those are posted on my LinkedIn. But Oscar Robertson, and of course, Eldon Baylor just died. I think I even wrote one on Rayford Johnson. But then, you've got different times. Oh, even Black inventors is another, another area to be considered. Golly, there's a host of subjects, historic landmarks, civil rights organizations, legal status of Blacks, growth and distribution of Black population, the Black family, the Black worker and labor, the Black woman, national Black organizations, inventors and scientists, the Black artists, the Black entertainer and performing arts, perspective on Black education, Supreme Court decisions. I could go on. So, I consider myself, a good researcher, but I'm finding information that it seems either hasn't been researched or even written down. So I feel that, I can share that in terms of an education. It's interesting when I consider how growing up here in Tacoma, all of the celebrities and people that I've met, and I'll use a good example. There's a lot of creatives from here in the Northwest, especially born here in Tacoma. Frank Herbert, who did the Dune series, Bing Crosby, Yaphet Kotto lived here and was born here. Olivia Newton-John's got a place up in Camano Island. J.J. Abrams, are all, I guess, kind of residents and half residents, like we call them snowbirds. So there's that. But when I was in elementary and junior high school, the AAA club, Tacoma Giants, was the farm club for the San Francisco Giants. And so all the ball players, the Alou brothers, McCovey was there for a minute, Juan Michel, Jose Cardinal, Manny Morta, Joe Garrido, Bob Perry, all of these young players, and I was like 12, lived right there, within blocks of where I was. And it's kind of funny, our family was always kind of the center of activity, I guess you could call it. And back then you didn't have to lock your doors, the back door was always open. But so I was able to, in fact, then the local merchants, car dealers, would give the ball players free cars. And there was this street called 19th Street that ran from basically where I lived all the way to the ballpark, and they had 442s and GTOs and and everything. They just speed up to the ballpark, and of course the police didn't even bother, But then I was able to go and shag balls. They'd hit me balls out in the field. I'd shag balls when they were foul balls and grab them and take them and have the team sign them. And then I'd take them and sell them for $5. So it was a lot of fun. But Jose was kind of the closest one to me, and Tito Fuentes. And when Jose went to the New York Yankees as a first base coach, but moving on to college in terms of baseball, I played baseball and football and basketball and cross country and all that. But I finally selected basketball as my main sport, and did well. Graduated from high school, all-city scholar athlete. Off to college, Central Washington University, 69-70, 31 wins, 2 losses. Inducted in the Basketball Hall of Fame in February 1996. I also was the vice president of the student body and had my own band. And that's when I did a concert, a Ragtime Jazz Festival, which included my grandfather. I had Uncle Eubie come out on a train. He wouldn't fly. And so they did the ragtime. I had 2 baby grands on the stage. Bob Darch, who was a historian from Joplin, Missouri, did the narration. Later, he produced an album called Golden Reunion of Ragtime that got a Grammy in 1982. Then the blues part with John Lee Hooker, had him come up from Oakland when he had Boom, 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 and Randy Lewis from Chicago when he came out with the In Crowd. Those weren't the only concerts I produced, but that was a very heartwarming, if you want to say even tribute to my grandfather and my great uncle Eubie Blake. So I've been blessed, I have to say, by the grace of God, to be able to be creative and continue forward. I'll be 72 April 14th. I'm in excellent health. Of course, being a former athlete, I'm very conscious of physical activity, diet, and everything else. I'm still 6'3". I haven't shrunk an inch, and keep on moving forward. Now, as a script writer, I have one project that I think for a lot of people is hard to fathom. I did a 2-year tour through the South, from starting being invited by Anthony Jordan who was a musical director at the AME Church. I was born in the AME Church to perform for the Little Richard House dedication. So that was the 30th of March, 2019. And then I went to Piedmont, South Carolina, because one of my colleagues, DJ Roland Gambrell, owns SoulGoldRadio.net. It's 24/7 worldwide. Nothing but 60s, 70s, and 80s love songs. And I did a spot to raise money for him to keep him on the air. Then I went to Atlanta to the Martin Luther King Monument. I'm an alpha, and we helped raise money to build that monument. Then I went to Ebenezer Baptist Church. Then I went to Birmingham and Montgomery because I did produced a piece. It's 1 minute, 58 seconds, MP8 Prayer by Dr. King. And since then, over, 50,000, 100,000 people may have seen it by now. Then I went to Hazelhurst, Mississippi, where Robert Johnson was born. And that's another story that I think, from a Black history perspective, is very important. But anyway, because all along the way, I was doing juke joint location. So when I was in Macon, we were rehearsing at the world-famous Grant's Lounge. And I talked to Johnny there, and I said, hey, this would be a great location once I get the funding. Then I went to Tupelo, Mississippi, where Elvis was born, because I just wanted to look there, and I was totally amazed that he was given the title, of the king, rock and roll or blues or whatever. I said, man, them white folks keep stealing our stuff. They've been doing it forever. So in terms of Robert Johnson, I have scripted it and the true story, and I've actually dispelled this myth. Every time you read anything about Robert Johnson, they always say that he died by selling himself to the devil, but that's not true. But what happened was the club owner's wife loved Robert and not him, and he poisoned him with strychnine and killed him. So I share that now. I want to keep that a secret, but but anyway. So throughout my tour, then I went to Salt Lake City with the Blues Foundation out of Memphis, and Trip Hawkins, and for a Guitar Shorty concert. Then I went to NOLA to perform with Willie Lockett and the Blues Crew, and then I was there with Ivan Neville and the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, because he came up to Tacoma at the Pantages Theater and had a performance there, and at the same time we were doing a ribbon cutting for KNKX 88.5 NPR radio station by having a location in Tacoma, which is right across the street. So I'm heavily involved with that, and actually heavily involved, period, in my community. So then I went to Tylertown, Mississippi, which originally was Ginn Town, to take a picture of my great-grandfather's headstone, and I passed it out to all the family members and trying to set up a family reunion. However, the COVID kind of killed that. Then I went to San Diego as a guest speaker for an acting seminar, then to LA, which would have been 3/6/20 at that point, for the after-hour Oscars party with Kelly and Ryan show. Then I went to Portland, because my drummer, Gary Hobbs, who played for Kenton, is there. Hang out with him. And then I went back to Tacoma. And
Gotcha.
on the 3rd of July, 2020, and or 2021, yeah. And so now I'm home. I actually have built my own broadcast studio to be able to go live. We didn't quite connect today, but I'm on Facebook right now, and I've got the information from LinkedIn to go live. So I'll do that eventually. But segueing back to Robert Johnson, on my trip to NOLA, I met Terry Marshall, the founder of the Marshall Amp. And he said for me to bring the project to the UK because it would be much more appreciated in Europe than it would be in the United States. And so I'm contemplating that once it's safe to travel again, because the soundtrack of all of his 40 songs is critical for the success of the film itself. So it's a $3,750,000 budget, and of course the model today is low budget, high ROI. And if you're going to say game plan, is to do the soundtrack of all 40 songs in a 2 CD set. Now here's where it's hard for, I think, the investor to fathom. Because if you take 100 plus million blues fans, and that's a conservative number, around the world, and sell that CD at $50, I mean, that's a lot of revenue. Of course, you got to take into, and that's gross, and you got to take into account the marketing and distribution, and making the CDs and so on and so forth. But still, so that's even before you even start shooting film. So financing, the album, start shooting, release the album during Black History Month or maybe even Christmas Day, and then the next year release the album or the motion picture. So what I've set up is to be able to drive traffic to the theater. So then there's another gross ROI there. Now the problem, of course, is distribution, but I have that already set up. When I was in acting school, Brad Neufeld, whose only film was Funhouse, I worked in the production crew with him. He introduced me to his dad, Mace, which Mace Neufeld Productions, and Indiana Jones, Red October, and so on and so forth. And Mace has the international distribution. Of course, there's a host of others in my network on LinkedIn as well that I can reach out to. So I've kind of skipped a step from going from actor basically to executive producer all in one leap. Because anybody that knows what an executive producer does is he turns it over to the producer to put it in the can while he's working on several other projects. But my main, after all of that said and done, I want to create a Northwest Hollywood, which is really an economic development 10-year plan, because we have Alaska, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington State under our Seattle local jurisdiction, Sag-Aftra. And we have everything here. It's a cinematographer's dream. So, Tyler has been able to do his thing, and he and Steve Harvey is another one. All three of us have a lot in common, and that is we were all homeless for 2 years. So I don't see any reason, that it can't come to fruition. It's just going to have to take time. And I think since Uncle Eubie lived to be 100, when I had him come out for the concert. I told him, I said, I'm going to one-up you. So hopefully I can get to 101. With today's medical science, it might be, go beyond that. As long as I stay healthy. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Might make it to 200, or you might make it to something like that. But definitely people are living longer. I know that a family friend just made it to, she just passed, but she made it to 103, and I think she was heading to 104 when she did pass. So it could be some tend to you saying to make it a lot longer, because we are living longer lives, and definitely that's something that is just a national trend. Even though the pandemic did eliminate a lot of people's lives with what was going on in regards to that. And as you were talking, a couple of questions crossed my mind, which is one that you mentioned this fact that, and we've had other guests, other artists that have had that hardship aspect of their life and everything. So you did say that there was a period of your time where you were homeless, and I was wondering what that was like and how you maintained the dream and kept the dream alive during those hard times.
Well, it's again, I just have to put it back to my faith. Do you know that poem, Footprints in the Sand? Mm-hmm. I believe that that's what actually happened during that 2-year period. Now, I never was under a bridge. I knew the social services, and so I always had a roof over my head. And I had some people, come and help me financially. But see, the thing is after 25 years of marriage, 30-year corporate career, retired from Wells Fargo in 2005, took my band, was playing the casino circuit, and my ex-wife didn't like it, period. So I was building the band, getting everything booked and all that. I came home with $1,000. And I said, "Here, baby." She said, "Is that all?" I went, "Uh-oh. That should have been a red flag right then." But then I'd always invite her, to the sets, if I was doing a commercial, in the area, or come to the gigs. Well, she came to one gig, and I had a female rhythm guitarist. And we were actually playing at an Elks Club, and went over, and she was with her doctor friend, and went over and said, "Hey, how'd you like the gig?" And it was kind of, cum si, cum sa kind of thing. And then Ann, her name was Ann Herring, called over and said, "Are you going to help us break down?" And of course, that was one of my responsibilities. So I said, "Hey, I got to go." Went over there. Well, then she comes to me, says she wanted a divorce in 2005. I said, "Hey, let's go to counseling." She said, "I don't need counseling. You need counseling." And the reason was because I have bipolar, and I was diagnosed in 1977. So amazing, again, to be able to have accomplished, if you've looked at my profile, all of what I've done all throughout that time. So that answers your question of how I became homeless, because she jerked all the insurance, and the medication would have been about $600 a month. Then my sister rescued me, basically, and there was a slow build back. But it was amazing that in 2008, I went to a family attorney and established my S Corporation, which is to issue securities, and the 501c3 for my Actors Workshop, and both of those are pending. So all the financing, it could be another project, summer camp or whatever else I've written. But all of that then is a launching pad to be able to roll out, my whole corporate structure. And I have all the departments there. I've talked to people, financial advisors and so on and so forth, say, "I get the funding, I want to hire you." It won't be hard to hire, a crews, because right here in the Northwest, we got great crews. But my goal then, too, is to train up the young actors and the young filmmakers, because somebody's got to take, well, I'll put it my place one day. So there's the mentorship that needs to happen. Of course, the mentorship I gained when I was executive director at Al Davies Boys and Girls Club from 92 to 97. I mentored a lot of young men that are in the NBA, that are in the NFL, that are been Olympic swimmers, Olympic boxers during that time period. So mentorship is a very key component of Tony Ginn. And again, then I'm going to segue back to my grandfather. He had some great phrases upon his death, or prior to his death. He said, look, son, if someone's talking good about you, it's great. If somebody's talking bad about you, if somebody's talking bad about you, that's okay. If somebody's talking good about you, that's great. But if they're not talking about you at all, find another profession.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely, you want people to talk about you in a good way, and that's always the better way. They're going to talk about you in those positive lights.
Yeah, right. Whether good or bad, you still come out on top. You can be a villain or an angel.
That's true. That's the way those movies are done and everything along those lines. Definitely, you hear that conversation going on with movies and even real life as well. So you make a good point in that, Mr. Ginn, that you definitely want people talking about you. I always believe in having people talk about you positively, but sometimes those negative lights can also be good as well. But definitely, I hear where you're coming from in that regard.
Well, when you measure positive and negative, if you use 100%, okay, 2% is always negative. So why would you dwell on a 2% when the 98% is positive? So then I make a little joke about it. It's like, okay, you can take and make a negative into a positive mathematically. So I'm 100% all the time. But then again, when I look at all of the things that are going on around us, the COVID, the hate crimes, the Donald still trying to stay in power, and you get the gist of what I'm saying. But there's that 98% that is hardly in the news narrative that's positive, even as bad as it is. What's the COVID created? Well, I have seen so many clear skies across the country. It's amazing. Emissions are down because people aren't driving that much. And then looking at the industry, I call it a digital renaissance. And man, it just keeps going. It started with, looking at people in different locations, and then talk shows in different locations, The View and all of them. And still today. And then musicians in different locations being able to record in harmony and from a different location. Then even, big screens, now the industry has adapted, like Netflix and Hulu and Apple TV and Paramount Plus, and I can go on, by streaming. Because the theaters basically are kind of closed. But I look at all that.
What are your thoughts about the future of the entertainment industry? Like I said, you've done a number of things. You've also been in academia, and a lot of academia has changed by going to more of a hybrid model. So what are some of your thoughts about the future of all of your careers as we do move forward and as we get out of this pandemic, and hopefully more and more people are taking the vaccine? So what are your thoughts about the future of entertainment and education and a number of other things?
Well, first, let's talk about the motion picture industry, because we were losing billions of dollars. But now Well, America's stupid too. I mean, all of a sudden want to reopen everything, and that's just going to exacerbate the problem in itself. But, if we were smart, follow the science, overrule politics, in certain cases now in states that are holding steady, here in Washington, for example, they're opening up the big screen theaters again at 50% capacity. So eventually, again, if we're smart, and I always say this too, the only way we're going to get there, of course, is to get rid of the skepticism and get shots in the arms. But it seems to me it's going to take us into 2023 to get that done. So another salient point in terms of the motion picture industry, as a result of all that, they're pushing out major releases to a later date. Good example is the James Bond movie is not due to come out till, I think, late 2022. So how do you get the audience back? To me, it's simple. Go back to the old model. Build a bunch of drive-in movie theaters. You can, what I call car social distancing. And of course, the metal thing that always in your window for the speaker, that's no longer there. But the technology, you can just stream the audio into your car. You got the big screen, and then there's other adaptabilities to that, in terms of public events, even political, things, people running for office, nonprofit organizations for fundraising. And it's interesting, as I looked into it, in Paris on the River Seine, they actually developed a floating drive-in theater where people come on their boats and watch a movie on the big screen. So, maybe that's the way to go. I don't know, because I think everybody now, I don't know if you ever checked out the sales on flat screens. They're out of sight. So, people are at home in the comfort of their home, and they're, streaming in the movies, first runs. And so I'm wondering what the health and the existence of these major theaters are going to be in the future. The Cinemarks, the Regals, the I guess Paramounts and whatever. And then you look at that, what's happening. Major studios are merging or being bought up. So there's a whole molecular thing that is going on, in terms of the future of our industry. But technology, it never quits. So I can imagine, well, we already know you got Dick Tracy wristwatches, and you can watch a ball game on your wrist. So, who knows, what this next, these next developments will be.
Yeah, that's very true. What are your thoughts, me and Dean were talking about this before you joined us and everything, about race relations? We're hearing a lot of things about what's going on with our Asian brothers and sisters, and definitely we had the Black Lives Matter movement last year and everything. But I was just wondering, what are some of your thoughts in terms of the direction of race relations? I know a lot of people are also concerned about what's going on with immigration as more people are coming from the border. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, that's a really disturbing to me in terms of strictly human existence. First, and I think, COVID has put us all on that same playing field where, we're all humans, we all bleed red. If I were in the military in a foxhole with a white guy, am I going to, shoot him? I don't think so. we're going to try to save both our asses, especially if we're Marines. But the disturbing aspect is it just seems, it's a reality, that any time there's a black subject that comes up, it's all of a sudden sends it off into orbit, somewhere else. And then lately, with the, people don't do any research, and I'll put it this way, which is kind of funny in itself, ironic. Native Americans were the original indigenous people in 10,000 BC as hunters and gatherers. And when you think about what the British and everything else, and the frontier and all that, the settlers did to them, and now they own casinos, all right? They're a lot smarter than people think. Then we look at slavery, and like I said earlier, at 1500, first slaves were coming, but then we have to look at the root cause of white supremacy. And so it started there, and I'm going to segue back to this in a second. So in 1865, after Lincoln was assassinated and the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, the KKK was formed to reassert white supremacy to influence the Union in the South. So what that means to me is we have 157 years of white supremacy that is, of course, permeated our White House and the consciousness of 70 million Americans, voters. So then you look at 1921, KKK initiations. Then you look at 2004, where the KKK is active, and then move that forward to the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and you name it, and just put them all under the umbrella or definition of white supremacy. And then you have like the Roger Stones, who's, been given a pass by the Donald. I don't even call him president anymore, or don't like to even use his name. And others, and of course, he's still spewing the big lie, but he's got his sycophants now in the House and the Senate, to be able to then try to destroy our democracy. But see, they've miscalculated. In other words, if you use Atlanta as an example, all of the 18-year-old new voters won. The demographics changing. And then, of course, now, historically, whenever the GOP or whatever you want to call them get threatened with losing their office, and they come up with voter suppression again. But so there's that, if I can kind of give that crystal ball kind of look. But then, now we have the Chinese, having been assaulted, but then all of a sudden forget about the Jews that have been, going through this and all that. So now the narrative is about the Chinese, but Black Lives Matter seems to be on the back burner now. And that is concerning to me. Here in my neighborhood, I got a view, I'm looking right at the church next door that I attend, and I work in the film and video department. Well, they had the flags at half staff. When John Lewis died, but they never prayed for John Lewis in the church. They had it half staff at the, and I'm not saying this because it's mostly a white church here, but I got two churches, Allen-AME and there, so it's opposite, vice versa, in Allen. But now you got the Chinese, and then there's no Chinese members. There's a few, but it's at half staff. And then yesterday, they prayed for the Chinese. So, there's still, even within the religious institutions, a division. And it's weird, we're all supposed to be God's children, but it seems like the children ain't listening. So, the bottom line is how are we going to get through all of this? My mother always told me, well, they're just going to have to die off. And then, of course, I'm looking at this next generation. My son, both sons, one's in Arlington, Virginia. He's 37 now. I got my 2 grandsons out there. And he's a leader. My youngest one's 25 and served his 4 and is a Marine. And, of course, he got his education kind of cut short. He got his AA, but the COVID changed that. But the point is, whenever they're having a gathering, I mean, it's all colors of the rainbow. They know. I even had to apologize to them. I said, I'm sorry that we left you with this mess that you have to correct. And of course, their focus is climate change and gun control. So you add all that up, and I'm going to segue now back to the vote in Atlanta, the 18-year-old new voters. So 2022, they'll be 20. Then we got a whole group of 18-year-old voters. And that's going to be a telling point in terms of House and Senate races that are going to come up for re-election. Then you got another 18-year-old, so just replicate it into 2024. Well, if you look at close, I mean, Joe just stumbled, down the steps coming out of Air Force One. And I've always said he's only going to serve 1 term. So that puts Kamala Harris in place to be the first black female and president, and then serve 2 terms, which takes it to 2030. And climate change and all that has to be addressed and hopefully taken care of by 2035. So, if you stay positive and patient and, just try to understand, let's call it evolution, if you want to call it, then you can maintain a perspective, that hopefully is calm. But the other thing is, throughout all that, hopefully we'll be able to have a civil discussion about race that then hopefully can bridge the gap of division in this country. There's one other aspect, though. Every country, if you're in Canada, you're Canadian, Australian, Nigerian, South American, Brazilian, whatever. But here in America, we don't identify ourselves strictly as Americans. And the reason I know is because when you when you apply for a job, you have to check a box. Well, African American, black, not of Hispanic, Hispanic, Southeast Islander, and everything. But why is that? It's because that's the way the federal government allocates dollars to communities. And then you've got another problem. It's based on the census, which is always 10 years behind. Then you have another problem of the nomadic relationship of people moving where jobs are. So the system is just totally dysfunctional, and if I wanted to use one word, the whole world's dysfunctional. So it's going to take people of goodwill, a collective, what I call a collective brain trust, to share any kind of knowledge or anything. It could be as much as, how do you do your HR, which of course should be under all EEO policies anyway. So we got a lot of work to do. And even here in the film industry, I was the co-founder of the American Scene Awards in 1986 to hire people of color and with disabilities. It's now a national award, under Sag-Aftra. And, of course, now LGBTQ is in there under our EEO policy. So I've seen a great change in terms of diversity, but we still have a lot more work to do. It always bugs me when I see a film, okay, it could be in England, and it's all white, when you know that there's brown or black folks there. So, you know, casting is one thing, but see, we have what you call extras, and their livelihood is based on that income to qualify them for health and welfare benefits, and even if they have to go to the actors' funds in an emergency. So, you know, like I say, there's still a lot of work to do. And I'm talking about black filmmakers, you know, I'm talking about white filmmakers. But these women in film breaking the glass ceilings. Well, I'd rather work for a woman, I think, than a man these days. But I want to control my own destiny. Anyway.
And you say you'd rather work for a woman than a man. You know what? And I understand where tell me where you're going with that, and then
yeah, Papa.
Well, first of all, I want to look at two parallel places. First, within the women in film, they are more, I want to say, sensitive. You know, they're like doctors. They want to spend more time with you as a patient than a male doctor.
Right.
The other is you look at politics. I mean, these women are just, you know, saying, okay, you know, you dudes, you're just fucking up. Oh, excuse me, you're just messing up.
Oh no, you can say it.
So yeah, you know, and then you look at all the single moms. You know, I mean, we got 6 million black men, brown men in prison. Mm-hmm. So, you know, so it's only a natural, you know, progression that I see. So when I say I'd rather work with a woman or for a woman, it's kind of two ways. Well, you can't help it.
Understood.
But I think, honest God, I think women really, in a lot of ways, are more creative than most males.
Right.
So you know, there's that too.
And glad you picked up
women know how to be frugal.
Yeah.
Yep.
No doubt about that. Dean, glad you picked up on me when the phone decided it wanted to drop off on me and all of that. One of the things I was getting ready to ask Tony, and I definitely am enjoying the conversation about the role of women in the industry and everything. But Tony, when you first came on, you mentioned your pride in being associated with a certain Greek association, and I know that Dean is also a Greek. I do not have anything to do with that organization, but they are definitely very popular. So I'd love to hear you talk about what that means to you being involved in the Greek life.
Oh, man. First of all, as an alpha, we're number one. I hope them Q dogs out there understand that.
No, we don't. You're the beginning, but we're the end. I understand that.
Well, see, the thing about Greek life, and within our Greek, black Greeks, you know, you got the females and the males. The one thing is, in order to be a Greek, you have to have a college education. So that sets us apart, you know, from most people. Well, many people. Then the camaraderie. It's like if you're playing basketball, you got a team. well, if you're a member of the Alphas or, Kappas or, whatever, it's a team. But the sad part is that we're not working as a team today. Mm-hmm. And that really needs to be emphasized. And one of the ways you can do it is with the Pan-Atlantic Council to continue, the focus on education and scholarships and so on and so forth. But we need to get more heavily involved in politics. Because if you look at Black history, going to the NAACP and its beginnings, and the Urban League and its beginnings, and the solids and foundation of the churches, and the Black fraternities and Black sororities. In history, we were totally out there as soldiers on the front line. Mm-hmm. Now we're kind of in the background. And a lot of times I'm thinking, not all, don't get me wrong, there's certain loud voices out there, but we need more loud voices.
Right.
So, especially stop and think about, how many millions of Greeks, Black Greeks, are in this country?
Yeah.
And when you look at all the different professions, lawyers, CPAs, entrepreneurs, maybe there's 1 or 2 billionaires in there. We haven't learned our lesson. First of all, we're as Black folks of the consumer base, we represent 57%. Now, if you go back to history, we had our Black banks. I think there's a couple that exist today. But if you put all of that together, could own credit unions, your own hotels, airline services, you name it, tree trimmers, and but for some reason or other, we just can't seem to get that mindset. Because when I look at the other ethnicities, they pull their dollars. I've worked with the Russians here. I've worked with the Native Americans here. I've worked with the Southeast Asians. I've worked with the Jews. They pull their dollars. So a dollar comes in the community, it might roll around for 6 or 7 times before it comes back out. Next thing you know, somebody got a house. Next thing you know, somebody's got to educate their kids. Next thing you know, the kids are doctors and lawyers and name it. They own their own construction companies, car dealerships, There's no reason that we cannot do that. But we just have to have a conversation of how to roll it out. Now, if you look at the corporate structure, they have what's called interlocking directorates. So you have one board member that sits on another's board, and that one sits on his board, and so the thing is we have boards of directors in many different areas. So one should be over on that one should be over on this one. They can share ideas, they can pool money, and build skyscrapers, So
oh yeah, no doubt about that. Mr. Ginn, as an author and as one involved in the film industry as well, what would you say to those folks that are out there that claim that we can't own our own distribution companies or we can't own our own publishing companies and that the days of Black Wall Street are over and that we shouldn't be trying to pursue kind of what you're trying to pursue in the Southwest with what you're trying to do in Tacoma, Washington with the film industry? But what would you say to those that are looking at folks like, say, an Oprah or even a Tyler Perry and saying that, yeah, they may own it, but eventually they'll sell it as Oprah has done with OWN, or they may not be doing the kind of products that these individuals want to see done, as in might be the case with Tyler and everything. But what do you say to those people that say that it's next to impossible for us to create our own methods of distribution?
Well, first of all, there's nothing impossible, really. But the question is, throughout your life, what kind of legacy do you want leave behind? You know, are you always going to be of goodwill? Are you always going to be able to give back and lift people up instead of putting them down? Are you going to learn to trust one another? Are you going to learn that we got to look at things from a global perspective today instead of intrinsically, you know, within the United States? Are you going to produce creative works that, and of course, you know, I got to give credit to, you know, Tyler and Spike. In fact, Spike is going to be the president of Cannes this year. You know, so, and quite honestly, you know, my cousin is Reginald Hudson, second cousin. And so Reggie, you know, in New York at the age of 30, kid and play and everything. He goes to Beverly Hills, BET, to be the co-producer of the Oscars, the executive producer of the Emmys, you know, and, you know, so there are examples of people that have a great deal of success, but is that success going to be a stamp on your life and your legacy by simply working together with the same mindset and the same goals in mind to lift up our people?
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
Economically,
yep.
You know, whatever, you know.
Yeah. And that's the other thing I was going to ask. What did you tell young folks when they say that they don't necessarily, and Dean is actually a member of one of these groups I'm getting ready to reference as well, and you referenced them earlier, but when you hear young folks that say they don't want to join, say, the NAACP or the Urban League or some of these other organizations because they feel that they're outdated and aren't serving the needs of their time, what is your answer to those, since these organizations have been around for many decades and definitely seem to have a very vital part in what's going on in society? But sometimes I think that too many of our folks in our community don't give them their just dues or don't want to work with them if they think that they're not doing issues that they are concerned about. So what do you talk when you see folks in Tacoma that are not involved in those organizations?
Well, I have to say, first of all, we cannot lose our sight of our dreams. Dreams will come true if you pursue them. Mm-hmm. The other is when a good example, when a white boy is born, he's privileged. When a black boy is born, he's not privileged at all. So he's got to work twice as hard to be able to advance himself in life. But what is missing, and I said it earlier, is mentorship. You have to have leaders of success to be able to come alongside with this young person, male or female. Let them shadow you in terms of come to work, see what I do, come to the ball field, whatever, But see, we look, I want to say it this way too. I think we beat the genius out of young people, and because when you're born, you're a genius. I hate to say it, but that's true. But we beat it out of them. And so by the time, I look at it as one reason why our black boys are not graduating from high school. They're jumping out in the 9th grade. They have their dreams or hopes or whatever beaten out of them. And that goes into a whole nother subject of abuse and drug addiction and so on and so forth. But I would say, as I tell my sons, simple thing. What is the most important thing you want to do in life? If you had one thing to choose, what would it be? Do you want to be an artist? Do you want to be a lawyer? Do you want to dig ditches? Do you know, whatever? What is the one thing? And go after it. And the bottom line, and it exists, at least in my mind, to everything. Just never give up.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. What do you tell your kids when they talk about, and that was one of the conversations that came up with Black Lives Matter, when they talk about their fear of law enforcement or their fear of the judicial system? You definitely mentioned some statistics that fall in that category, and Dean actually works in corrections. But what do you say when you talk to young folks that are afraid of being involved or engaged and having their parents have to have that talk, which a lot of other societies don't have to have?
Well, I'll say with my boys, that I've raised, I've given them education to understand the system. As a Boys and Girls Club executive director, mentoring these young men and women, saying, okay, you can look at law enforcement as a intimidator, oppressor, or you can look at law enforcement as a member and a supporter of the community. Of course, it gets exacerbated when you have in the news a white cop killing a black child. But see, the narrative and the news coverage focuses on that instead of this black cop that is working at the food bank, So, and then of course you got the black cops, killing people too. I said all that to say this is, if you go through life with fear and you tie that into any faith-based aspect of your being, if you have fear, you don't know how to make that transition to the upper room.
That makes a lot of sense. You were talking earlier about a number of the projects you got going on, whether that's the Robert Johnson project or about your own relative and everything of that nature. If folks are listening, and we do have a global audience and everything, and they're able to help you in any way, what kind of help do you need to get your projects done, and how can they go about helping you if they're looking to I know you had mentioned investing, but they're looking to invest, or if they're looking to possibly serve on one role or another, what kind of opportunities exist in the various things that you are creating, and how can one get in touch with you social media-wise if we've got listeners that are as far away as India and Australia that may be interested?
My best, the best network is through LinkedIn, period. They can look at my profile, whoever's out there listening, and see, what I have done, articles that I've written, and so on and so forth. But see, I've been writing since 2011. I've written a sci-fi. I've written a sci-fi animated short. I've got a true story. I've got the Buffalo Soldier story. I've got Summer Camp, a faith-based film. What else? Several others. So basically, I've got a package. But the reason I set up the S Corporation is because it puts the investor in second position, which means that, and if somebody wants to really help, is just to become one of my board members, because the board will own 75% of the securities, the stock. And my plan is unprecedented, I think, is to take that other 25% in an IPO, registered in the SEC under HSX, which covers the motion picture industry. And then, of course, it's another fundraising tool to be able to build structures. You'll be able to have your own distribution. And then Bullseye Entertainment is an LLC, And then my 501c is nonprofit, tax exempt, which goes into the faith-based film because another precedent or unprecedented thing I would like to do is to raise this $100,000 budget with tax-deductible donations.
That makes a lot of sense. That's our 10-minute warning and everything, but we still got time for and everything. And you just actually alluded to one of my questions, which is how important is faith to you? Because like I said, part of what you're doing, some of these films are faith-based. So just curious as to those that are listening, how important is faith and spirituality to you? Sometimes I differentiate between those two, but how important are they in your life?
Well, let me go back to baptism at Allen AME. Pastor Williams, his son was Charlie Williams, who played at SU. In fact, it's kind of ironic because Elton Baylor played there too. And then my godfather is Bishop Ellis Casson. So I started there, and of course I started singing gospel too. Then later on in life, I was with Young Life. And then with Gordon McLean out of Chicago, who is a minister in juvenile justice with the Youth for Christ. And I would go here. We had a radio show actually on Sundays, and we would go to one of the juvenile centers and minister to the incarcerated youth. So, that's, and then June 25th, a lot of people I'm sure can't say this, June 25th, 1966, I'm in my bedroom with Gordy, and Gordon leads me to Jesus. So Jesus has been my heart ever since then. So there is, the foundation. And just when we're all supposed to, well, according to the Bible, we're all going to suffer. But, as you go through life, well, you're going to get steered away in this path, you're going to get steered away in that path. But eventually, if your faith is solid in your foundation, you're going to get back on the right path. So, young folks, and this is another major concern, I'm concerned, how is the church going to survive if young folks decide, or I have decided, I don't want to go to church, So they're not tithing, which means that the church could go out of business. And I'm seeing churches go out of business as a result of the populations getting older and no young folks to come in and continue the ministries. So there's got to be an effort. And I'll say collectively, let's just say in the AME church, but it could be Kojic, it could be, Baptist church or whatever, to really get out there and reach out to the youth. But see, the youth is kind of funny. It's like, how do you get them there? Food. Very simple. Maybe have them do their own plays or whatever under the umbrella of the church. So to me, there's nothing impossible. And can't is not in my dictionary. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it definitely. It definitely sounds like you've done a lot of tremendous work. You've touched on some of that. We'll have to get you to come back and explain and explore some of the other ones as well. One of the things we try to do on all of our platforms is give a word of encouragement, a word of positivity that they would like to share with our global audience. So this is your opportunity to do that right now. So any words of encouragement or positivity or just a positive note that you would like to leave with our audience, not just here in the United States, but around the various countries around the world as well. I'm sure that they would greatly appreciate that.
Do not let your past define your future.
Can you give a little bit more explanation of what you mean by that? I mean, that's a very powerful statement. I know where you're going with that, but I'm sure others may want to just hear a further explanation.
Well, a lot of times your past is not pleasant, not fun. You got to have fun in life, but your past kind of becomes like a ball and chain. You know, it keeps you imprisoned in your mind. So if you let that define your future, then your future is impaired, which is why I say do not let your past define your future, because your future is always brighter than your past.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. One of the other things, and I know you're also an educator, so I'd love to hear your quick thoughts on this, but do you think that we can do a better job of encouraging our educators to do better in terms of supporting the arts? Because that's something that's a big time thing that I'm very much passionate about, is the need for us to do more support of the arts within the school system and just in society in general. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, when you talk about the school system, I want to touch about the arts, okay? But I want to point out this too. We haven't taught civics in the classroom since 1970. There's never been Black history taught, so leave that off to the side. But in terms of the arts, I mean, you know, state dollars are supposed to be going to education, but what has happened is, okay, there's no more music department. Oh, there's no more drama department. Oh, there's no more bands. You know, I'm wondering if you got Southern against Grambling, are they going to be able to have competition? So those are, you know, some focuses. Now within the community itself, there are foundations that concentrate on youth and families and performing arts. And there's grants out there. So you have to, you know, research it, contact, and then provide, get the grants to provide the funding, then get these new, I like to say, new up-and-coming stars, filmmakers, set directors, makeup artists, you name it. Because, like I said before, somebody's going to take our place one day. But you have to provide the environment and the opportunity for them to be able then to work in those arenas. And a lot of times what I see is the doors are closed. So you got to open the doors. You have to have adults to be able to mentor them, to bring them along, and to never, ever take their dreams away from them. Because for me as a scriptwriter, it starts with a dream, an idea, a story, a script, a teleplay, and a shoot. So if you take that pattern in terms of a makeup artist, you know, they've got to be able to have the opportunity to, and maybe the best word is to provide more internships to be able to enter the field. Now, I was also an adjunct professor, and I taught animation to animation students at DigiPen Institute of Technology up here in Redmond. And Nintendo was right next door, and that was where all these students went to do their internship. And when they're accepted into the institution where they can get a BFA or a Master's in Fine Arts, they have heavy art and heavy computer science. Well, if you look at that field alone, animation makes more money than motion picture industry anyway. So, but we need to have more young persons of color in that field. So there's, you know, but there's opportunities there, again, you know, to go to DigiPen Institute of Technology. It's actually digipen.edu and, you know, see what the program is. Claude Comer, who is Lebanese, is the one that founded it. And there's Redmond, Vancouver, BC, and Singapore for those institutions. When a person graduates as a BFA, it's going to be a minimum of 60 to 80K, So, a decent living. And then, of course, the Pixars of the world, the Disneys, they need that crop of new creatives to, work in the industry.
No doubt about that.
Let me segue back to education and medical field. I don't think a lot of people realize that NYU offers free scholarships for people that want to be doctors. So of course it's expensive to live in New York City, but they're looking, and they got the money to do it. Spike has created, I think, a $78 million fund, for the Tisch School of the Arts. So, there's a lot of things. I mean, and if you want to have something to really check out the net worth of certain actors. Let's say The Rock, $78 million. Spielberg, I don't know, $350 billion or something. I mean, it's interesting when you do that. And then I'm going to segue back to this bipolar condition. There's a lot of bipolar actors. So, and then I'm going to segue. I've got Eugene Ebner. I'm going to be doing a Zoom interview with him probably mid-April. He's in LinkedIn.
Cool. Definitely sounds like some amazing things that you're involved with, and we'll definitely be keeping track of all the things that you're doing, and definitely looking forward to the ways that these are all developing, and looking forward to learning more about them as you continue to develop them and all of that. I know that Dean's going to jump in and tell where our other shows are, and also some of the other places that you can hear this interview, but definitely you've definitely brought a lot of attention to a lot of things that needed to be brought attention to. And I'm thinking, hey, Dean, I think we went in the wrong field, because I've been doing media and event planning for all these years, and you've been doing corrections. I think we should have gone into animation if they started at 80K, but that's just my thoughts. But, it's like
well, if I ever met you in person, I bet you're really animated yourself. I could just
can be sometimes, but Dean, what do you want to say?
Huh?
Yeah. It may have been, but in another lifetime, because I'm at the end of my, I'm at the end of my career now, man.
Do you mind? Let me ask you, how old are you?
I am 48.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
But
you're a baby.
Look, I've done my time in my profession, so I don't plan to be, working too much longer. I'm counting down those years, and then I'm gonna ride off into the sunset.
Well,
so.
But I'm trying to tell you, you just bop till you drop. That's it.
I'm a bop, but it ain't gonna be much of no clock.
Yeah. Well, the thing is if I divide a life in 100 years, okay, you're in your second 30. I could be considered in my last 30. All right.
Okay.
However, the entertainment, there's no ageism. There's no cutting off and retiring. You just bop till you drop.
I hear you. We go bop till we drop, and like I said, I'm hitting about the big 5'9" in July, so there's a 11-year gap between me and Dean. But like I said, about a 10-year gap. But I'm gonna try to bop till I drop, as well as Mr. Ginn is saying.
Maybe when it's safe to travel again, or have to just come out to North Carolina.
Have you visit North Carolina and New Jersey, because Dean's actually in Jersey, and do some more of that traveling and all. But Dean, if you would just tell folks where they can catch us and everything, and also the
Well,
other shows, because I know we've already been going fast and are in that danger zone.
Dean, I got to
Right.
ask Dean. Do you know what's this gal's name? She's got a show. Pinkston, Angie Pinkston in Staten Island.
I do not.
Okay. Well, anyway, the one thing, my uncle lives in New Jersey, looking over the Hudson River.
Okay.
And the one thing I know, about Jersey is it's cheaper to live in Jersey and cross the bridge than work in New York.
That's true. That's true. Very true. Yep.
I've covered a lot of ground, brothers.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
I've been all over Canada, all through South America. The only one place I haven't been yet is across the pond, and I'm going to get it in.
All right. Well, I gotta get it in before we get it off. They're about to shut us down.
Yeah. Oh, so, hey, you could buy your own signal for your TV station. They auction off. The FCC auctions off signals.
Okay.
You might want to check that out.
We'll definitely check that out, and we appreciate you coming on with us tonight, y'all. It's Straight Talk with Dean and Mark, Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to catch the replays on the Skyhawk Radio Network, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow and Wednesday afternoons. And if you miss those, then we got replays and more replays on Radio Public, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Podfollow, Deezer, GeoSavin, and right here, Blog Talk Radio, where we are a part of the Level Podcast Network, where you can catch other great shows such as the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause, the Chef Gang Radio Show, Funk from the Front Seat, Funk Music with Zach, Learning Unwrapped, Let's K-12 Better, Marketing with Russ, a.k.a. hashtag Russ Selfie, Mona Shake and the Minority Reports, Mullings, Music and Memories with Mark Lee, The Online Dinner Party with Mark Lee, the Plant a Good Seed Podcast, the Reinvention Road Trip, She's on Call, the Just Podcast, the Mark Lee Show, the Spin It Social Hour, Virginia Interfaith Live, WNC Original Music, and of course, Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. Now, like I always say, when you walk outside your front door, it's showtime and the world is your stage. Just make sure that people are not watching the rehearsal. With that being said, it's the six-man Dean Geronimo. Have an outstanding week, and we see y'all in 7 days.
Well, we'll have some more amazing guests that'll be on the air with us. We've already alluded to some of them as well, so there'll be some amazing guests that will share some knowledge. We want to thank Ellis X and Potted for creating some great guests for us, and our new partners in crime that Dean helped us find, Matchmaker FM. So definitely they've been helping us find some amazing guests as well, and we know that some of those people will be appearing in the near future, because we've definitely got a show going on next week. I'm not sure if we're doing a show in April, because I forgot to ask Dean if we're doing anything on Easter Monday. So are we doing anything on Easter Monday?
We'll do the replay. We're going to take that day, take a little rest, man. But, next week we'll see him in 14 days.
Right, we'll see them in 7 days, and then after that we'll see them in 14 days. So 7 days and 21 days is what we're saying.
Yeah, something like that. But we'll give them a reminder next week.
Oh, yeah.
So y'all have a good evening, y'all. Peace.
Y'all take it easy. Peace.